The mic is hot. Let's break this down. It is over. The dream is dead. And honestly, it didn't die with a bang. It died with a singular, terrifying sentence. 24 hours. That is the timeline we are looking at between we are going to replace the US dollar and please, Mr. President, don't bankrupt us. If you've been watching the cable news networks this morning, you are being lied to. I'm not saying they're mistaken. I'm saying they are actively gaslighting you. I watched 3 different anchors today call this a negotiation tactic, a trade dispute. One of them even called it protectionist rhetoric. Please, give me a break. This isn't a trade dispute. This is a hostage situation. And for the first time in 20 years, the United States is the one holding the gun. Here's what they aren't telling you. While the talking heads are debating whether tariffs are inflationary, which, by the way, we need to talk about because the math they're using is from 1980, the actual currency markets are screaming. I'm looking at the terminal right now. The real, cratering. The ruble, don't even ask. Why? Because Donald Trump didn't just tweet. He explicitly warned that any move towards a common BRICS currency would trigger a 100% tariff on all imports from those nations. 100%.
Let's be clear about what that means. That isn't a tax. That is a deletion. That is an economic kill switch. You have these experts in D.C., the ones with the fancy degrees, who've never negotiated anything harder than a lunch order, telling you that the BRICS is this unstoppable juggernaut, that China and Russia have outsmarted us, that the dollar is toilet paper. Really? Because the second the threat of a 100% tariff hit the wires, nobody ran to the yuan. Nobody ran to this imaginary BRICS coin. They panicked. Because they realized something that the establishment in Washington forgot decades ago. The U.S. consumer is the engine of the entire global economy. If we close the door, they don't just lose money, they starve. So why should you care? You're in Ohio or Florida or Texas. You're trying to pay for groceries. You're thinking, great, a trade war, now my sneakers cost more. Stop. That's the trap. That's what they want you to think, so you get scared and demand the president back down. Here is the reality. If the dollar loses its status as the reserve currency, which is exactly what BRICS was trying to engineer, your inflation doesn't go up by 5%, it goes up by 500%. Your savings vanish. This move, this mean tweet or whatever they want to call it, it just saved the value of every single dollar in your bank account. But of course, nobody is explaining the mechanics of how this actually kills their currency project. They just say, Trump threatens tariffs. It's lazy.
So put the coffee down. I'm going to show you the map. I'm going to show you why Putin and Xi are currently sweating through their suits and why the end of the dollar just got canceled. You ready? Because the numbers I'm about to read you are going to make you wonder what the heck our State Department has been doing for the last 10 years. To understand why this specific threat, the 100% number, is causing a meltdown in Beijing and Moscow right now, you have to understand the game we were playing versus the game we are playing today. For the last 15 years, the United States basically looked at BRICS like a cute little science project. You had Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They would meet once a year, take a nice photo, release a statement saying, "We want a fairer world." And Washington would yawn. We let them build their new development bank. We let them sign currency swap agreements. Why? Because we thought they were trapped. We thought, where else are they going to go? We were arrogant. And while we were sleeping, they weren't just taking photos. They were building a tunnel out of the prison. They were quietly stacking gold, tons of it. They were setting up the plumbing to bypass the SWIFT system. They were getting ready to flip the switch. Then came the catalyst. It wasn't the invasion of Ukraine. It wasn't the trade war in 2018. It was the moment BRICS announced they were expanding. Suddenly, you have Iran, Egypt, UAE, countries that control the world's oil, the world's shipping lanes, and the world's manufacturing. That's not a club anymore. That is an economic blockade waiting to happen. They thought they had checkmate. They thought we control the resources, so the dollar is dead. But they forgot one thing. They forgot who buys the stuff.
And this is where the president's threat changes the physics of the entire global economy. When he said 100% tariff, he wasn't talking about a tax. He was talking about closing the cash register. Now, I know what you're screaming at your phone right now. I can hear the comment section already, but tariffs are taxes on Americans. If we tariff China 100%, my iPhone costs $5,000. Inflation will kill us. Stop. Breathe. Let's look at that argument, because it's the oldest trick in the globalist playbook. Yes, in the vacuum, if you slap a tariff on a toaster, the toaster gets more expensive. That is Econ 101. But we are not in Econ 101. We are in a currency war. If the dollar collapses, which is the explicit goal of a BRICS currency, you're not going to be worried about the price of a toaster. You're going to be worried about the price of bread. Look at Argentina. Look at Venezuela. When a currency dies, you don't get inflation of 10%. You get inflation of 10,000%. You need a wheelbarrow of cash to buy a carton of eggs. So the choice isn't cheap goods versus expensive goods. The choice is expensive goods versus your money becoming worthless paper. The president is betting that you'd rather pay a little more for a flat-screen TV than have your 401k turn into zero. And the numbers back him up. We import over $600 billion worth of goods from these nations every single year. That is $600 billion of their economy that relies on your wallet. If that goes to zero tomorrow, their factories close, their unemployment skyrockets, their banks fail. China is currently sitting on a real estate crisis that makes 2008 look like a picnic. Their youth unemployment is so bad, they stopped publishing the data. Do you really think Xi Jinping can afford to lose his biggest customer right now? Do you think he can look at his people and say, sorry, you have no jobs, but at least we stuck it to the Americans?
No, he can't. That is why the markets are panicking. They know the U.S. consumer is the only thing keeping the global machine running. But here's the scary part. Here's the false hope that everyone in Washington is clinging to. They think this threat is enough. They think China and Russia will just fold, say, okay, sorry, and go back to using the dollar. They think we can just bully them into submission and go back to brunch. They are wrong, because while the 100% tariff stops them from launching a new currency today, it doesn't solve the problem. It just corners the animal, and a cornered animal doesn't surrender, it attacks. We just told the biggest economies in the emerging world that they are our enemies. We just drew a line in the sand. And if you think they're just going to walk away, you haven't been paying attention to what they're building in the shadows. Because there is a mechanism, a specific technical trapdoor in the global financial system that they can use to hurt us without launching a new currency. It's complicated, it's boring, and it's the most dangerous thing nobody is talking about. And if they pull this lever, a 100% tariff won't save us. It might actually speed up the crash. Let me explain how the trapdoor works. To understand the trapdoor, you have to understand one simple, terrifying fact about the American economy. We are the popular kid in high school who throws the best parties, drives the nicest car, and wears the most expensive clothes. But, and here is the secret, we're paying for all of it with a credit card that is co-signed by the very people we just threatened.
We call this the Treasury market. For decades, the deal was simple. We buy cheap plastic stuff from China, they take our dollars. But they can't just stack paper bills in a warehouse, right? So they turn around and loan that money back to the United States government by buying our debt, Treasury bonds. It's a perfect loop. We get the goods, they get the interest, and the U.S. government gets a limitless checking account to fund the military, Social Security, and those stimulus checks you liked so much. But here is the trapdoor, the mechanism that Washington is praying you don't understand. What happens if China and the BRICS nations decide they don't need to loan us money anymore? See, the president's tariff threat is like standing in the doorway of Walmart and screaming, if you guys start your own store, you're banned from shopping here. And sure, that scares them, but while we're guarding the front door, they're in the basement cutting the power lines. That power line is a project called mBridge. I know, it sounds like a boring software update, but it is actually the financial equivalent of a nuclear weapon. mBridge is a digital platform developed by the central banks of China, Thailand, the UAE, and Hong Kong. It allows these countries to send money to each other instantly, using their own digital currencies without ever touching a US dollar, without using the SWIFT system, and, crucially, without the United States being able to see, stop, or sanction the transaction. Think of the US dollar like the chancy chips at a global casino. If you want to play at the tables, global trade, you have to exchange your cash for our chips. That gives the house, the US, total control. If we don't like you, we cash you out and kick you out.
mBridge is them building a private poker game in the parking lot. They're betting with their own money. They don't need our chips. And if they don't need our chips, they don't need to buy our debt. This is the catch-22. If Trump hits them with 100% tariffs, he cuts off their access to the US consumer. Fine, that hurts them. But in retaliation, they don't have to launch a BRICS currency to hurt us back. They just have to stop buying our treasuries. If China, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia stop recycling their profits into US debt, who is going to buy it? You? Me? We are $35 trillion in debt. We need to borrow billions every single day just to keep the lights on. If the BRICS nations walk away from the bond market, the interest rate on our debt doesn't just go up, it explodes. I'm talking about a world where the interest rate on the 10-year Treasury hits 7%, 8%, maybe 10%. Okay, so what? You ask. I don't buy bonds. No, but you buy houses. You buy cars, you have credit card debt. The 10-year Treasury is the gravity of the financial universe. If that rate doubles, your mortgage rate goes to 15%. Your car loan goes to 20%. The value of your home, it crashes by 40% overnight because nobody can afford the monthly payment. This is the domino effect.
This is the domino effect. The boycott. BRICS uses mBridge to trade oil and goods without dollars. The dump. They stop buying US Treasuries because they don't need the dollar reserves anymore. The spike. US interest rates skyrocket to attract new lenders. The crunch. The US housing market freezes, banks fail, and the government is forced to print trillions just to pay the interest, triggering hyperinflation. The president knows this. The Federal Reserve knows this. That is why this 100% tariff threat is such a gamble. He's betting that the pain of losing the US market is greater than the gain of their independence. He's betting the house. And the scary part, the outcome isn't up to him anymore. It's up to a few men in Beijing and Moscow who are looking at that trap door and wondering if today is the day they pull the lever. But wait, it gets worse. Because there is one final piece of this puzzle that guarantees the US loses even if we win the trade war. There is a deadline coming up that nobody in the media is talking about, a date on the calendar that effectively makes the decision for them. Let me tell you about the repricing event. The repricing event isn't some conspiracy theory I found on a message board. It is a mathematical certainty sitting on the balance sheet of the United States Treasury. And it is happening in roughly 90 days. Here is the date you need to circle on your calendar. March 2026. Why March? Because that is when the great maturity wall hits. See, the US government doesn't just have debt, it has a schedule. And in the first quarter of 2026, a colossal amount of short-term US debt, trillions of dollars borrowed during the pandemic, comes due. We have to pay it back. But we don't have the money. So what do? We have to roll it over. We have to borrow money to pay off the old money.
Usually, this is routine. We call up China, Japan, and Saudi Arabia, and they buy the new debt. But remember the trap door we just talked about? Remember mBridge? What happens if we go to the market in March to refinance $3 trillion and the BRICS nations say, no thanks? That is the repricing. It is the moment the world realizes the emperor has no clothes and no credit limit. If nobody buys that debt, the Federal Reserve has only one option: print it. All of it. They will have to print trillions of dollars overnight to prevent a U.S. default.
And when you print that much money that fast, the price of everything, gold, oil, Bitcoin, land, instantly reprices higher in dollar terms. It's not that gold becomes more valuable, it's that the dollar becomes confetti. So where does this leave us? What does the world look like when the dust settles? Let's look at the two scenarios. A, the soft landing, the fantasy. Trump's tariff threat works, Xi Jinping blinks because his economy is crumbling, BRICS fractures, India pulls out because they hate China more than they hate the dollar. The US manages to negotiate a new deal, maybe backing the dollar with a little bit of Bitcoin or gold to restore trust. Inflation stays high, maybe 5–6%, but the system holds. You keep your job, but you get poorer slowly. B, the rug pull. The ugly truth. The 100% tariff accelerates the split. BRICS announces a gold-backed trade settlement unit in January. By March, when the U.S. debt wall hits, foreign buyers go on strike. The Fed prints the difference. We see a flash crash in the dollar. Import prices double overnight. You go to the gas station, and it's $8 a gallon. You go to the grocery store, and limits are enforced. The U.S. government implements capital controls, meaning you can't move your money out of the country. I'm not a fortune teller, but I look at the incentives, and right now, the rest of the world has every incentive to let us fall. The 2030 vision, the split world. Fast forward 5 years, we are looking at a bifurcated planet. The global economy is dead. In the West, US, Europe, you have the dollar zone. High technology, high surveillance, but high inflation. In the East, BRICS, they have the resource zone. They have the oil, the food, and the manufacturing, trading on a gold commodity standard. The days of buying a $5 t-shirt from Vietnam are over. The days of cheap electronics are over. We're going back to the 1970s, but with iPhones and AI. So what do? I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a person reading the map. But if I'm you, I'm doing 3 things immediately. 1, get out of the middle. The middle class is the target. Inflation is a tax on people who hold cash. Do not keep your life savings in a checking account earning 0.1% interest. That is guaranteed poverty. You need hard assets. I don't care if it's gold, silver, land, or yes, Bitcoin. You need to own things that the Federal Reserve cannot print. 2, become unsanctionable. The government is going to get desperate. They will raise taxes. They will increase control. Learn a skill that can be traded locally. If you work a laptop job that can be done by AI or outsourced to India, you are vulnerable. If you can fix a car, wire a house, or grow food, you have currency that works in any economy. And 3, watch the swap lines. This is your canary in the coal mine. If you hear news that the Federal Reserve is opening emergency liquidity swap lines with foreign central banks, that is the signal. That means the plumbing has burst. That is your 24-hour warning to secure your position before the banks declare a holiday. The final word. Look, I know this is heavy. I know you want to click away and watch a cat video, but ignoring this won't stop it from happening. The media wants you focused on the political circus. Who said what? Who tweeted what? It's a distraction. The real war isn't happening on CNN. It's happening in the bond market. It's happening in the plumbing of the global financial system. You aren't crazy for worrying about this. You're early. And in this game, being early is the only way to survive. Stay sharp, watch the bonds, and don't let them gaslight you. I'll see you in the comments.